My name is Gene, and I'm 82 years old. For 7 decades of my life, I walked through this world with my eyes fixed on everything except what truly mattered. I built a successful career, raised a family, accumulated possessions, and checked off every box that society told me would bring happiness. Yet, here I was, sitting in my empty living room on a Tuesday evening last spring, surrounded by all my achievements, feeling more hollow than I had ever felt in my entire life. The silence in that room wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the absence of something I couldn't even name at the time. Something essential was missing, and I had spent most of my adult life running from that void, filling it with work, with busyness, with anything that would keep me from facing the question that was now staring me in the face. Why had I spent so many years feeling like a stranger in my own life? Let me take you back to where this journey really began. I was 28 when my father passed away unexpectedly. He was only 54, a man who worked every day of his life to provide for our family. I remember standing at his funeral, looking at his casket, and feeling this overwhelming anger, not grief, not sadness, but pure, raw anger. If there was a God, why would he take a good man who had so much left to give? That day I made a decision that would shape the next 4 decades of my life. I decided I couldn't trust in anything I couldn't see, control, or understand. I threw myself into work with a vengeance. I climbed the corporate ladder, believing that success would fill whatever emptiness I felt. I worked 16-hour days, missed countless family dinners, and convinced myself that providing financially was the same as being present. When my wife Sarah would mention church or faith, I'd politely change the subject. When my children asked me about God, I'd tell them to ask their mother. I had built walls so high around my heart that I didn't even realize I was living in a prison of my own making. The years passed in a blur of meetings, promotions, and achievements. I told myself I was happy. I had everything I thought I wanted, but deep down there was this persistent whisper, this nagging sense that I was living someone else's life. I pushed it down, buried it under more work, more goals, more distractions. Then came the diagnosis. Prostate cancer at 65. Suddenly, all those hours in boardrooms, all those missed birthdays and anniversaries, all that success felt meaningless in the face of mortality. As I lay in that hospital bed after surgery, staring at the ceiling tiles, I felt more alone than I had ever felt in my life. Sarah held my hand, my children visited, but there was a loneliness that no human connection seemed able to touch. For years after that, I struggled with what people call a midlife crisis, except I was well past midlife. I retired early, thinking that would solve everything. I traveled, I pursued hobbies, I tried to reconnect with Sarah and the kids, but that emptiness persisted. It was like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. Nothing seemed to stick. I had been so convinced that I could figure everything out on my own. I was the type of man who read the instruction manual from cover to cover, who planned every detail, who believed that intelligence and willpower could solve any problem. The idea of surrendering to anything beyond my understanding felt like weakness. Faith seemed like something for people who weren't strong enough to face reality on their own terms. But pride has a way of keeping us from the very thing our souls are crying out for. The moment everything changed was so ordinary that I almost missed it entirely. I was 78, sitting on my front porch on a quiet Sunday morning. Sarah had passed away 2 years earlier, and the house felt enormous and empty, without her laughter filling the rooms. My children lived their own busy lives in different states, and I saw them maybe 3 or 4 times a year. I was watching the sunrise, something I had never taken time to do during my working years, when I noticed my neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez coming back from early morning church. She was probably in her 70s herself, walking slowly but with this sense of peace on her face that I couldn't understand. She saw me and waved, then came over to the fence that separated our yards. "Good morning, Jean," she said, with that warm smile she always had. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" "It is," I replied, though I hadn't really been paying attention to the beauty until she mentioned it. She looked at me for a moment, with those kind eyes, and then she said something that would echo in my mind for weeks. "You know, Jean, I pray for you every Sunday. I pray that you'll find the peace that's been waiting for you all along." I didn't know what to say. Here was this woman who barely knew me, praying for me every week. There was something in her voice, something genuine and caring, that broke through my defenses in a way that no argument or theological discussion ever could. That night, for the first time in over 50 years, I found myself talking to God. It wasn't elegant or sophisticated. I didn't kneel or fold my hands or use any special words. I just sat on the edge of my bed and said, "God, if you're really there, I don't know how to do this. I've spent my whole life trying to be strong, trying to have all the answers, but I'm tired. I'm so tired of carrying everything by myself. That was it. No lightning bolt, no dramatic vision, no choir of angels, just an old man, admitting he couldn't do life alone anymore. But something did change that night. It was subtle at first, like the way dawn slowly brightens the sky without you noticing the exact moment day begins. I started feeling less burdened. The loneliness didn't disappear, but it felt different, less overwhelming. It was as if someone was sitting beside me, even when I was alone. Over the following months, I began to notice things I had been blind to for decades. The way sunlight streamed through my kitchen window each morning wasn't just light, it was a gift. The phone calls from my children weren't obligations to endure, they were connections to cherish. Even my memories of Sarah weren't just sources of grief anymore, they became treasures I could hold without the pain overshadowing the joy. I started reading, not business journals or news articles, but books about faith, about meaning, about God's love. I picked up a Bible that Sarah had tried to give me years earlier. Reading it felt like discovering letters written specifically for me, addressing questions I had carried for decades, but never knew how to ask. If you're enjoying this story and it's touching your heart, I'd be grateful if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means more to me than you know, and it helps this message reach others who might need to hear it. The most profound transformation wasn't in my circumstances, it was in my heart. I began to see that all those years I thought I was strong and independent, I was actually weak and isolated. True strength, I learned, comes from admitting our need for something greater than ourselves. True peace comes not from having all the answers, but from trusting the one who does. I started attending church, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I joined Mrs. Rodriguez and her family sometimes, and the sense of community I found there filled spaces in my heart I didn't even know were empty. These weren't perfect people, they were just people who understood that life is too big to navigate alone. As I look back on my 82 years, there are insights I wish I had understood much sooner, truths that could have saved me decades of unnecessary struggle. The first thing I learned too late is that pride is not strength, it's fear in disguise. I spent so many years afraid to admit I didn't have all the answers, afraid to seem weak or needy. But acknowledging our limitations isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It opens the door to help we never knew was available. The second truth I discovered is that God's love isn't something we earn through good behavior or achievements. It's a gift that's been waiting for us all along. I spent decades trying to be worthy of love, not realizing I was already worthy, simply because I was His child. All those years of striving and performing were unnecessary. I was loved before I ever did anything right, and I'm loved despite all the things I've done wrong. The third insight that changed everything is that surrender isn't giving up, it's finding rest. For 70 years, I carried burdens that were never meant for my shoulders. I tried to control outcomes that were beyond my influence, worried about futures I couldn't predict, and tortured myself over past mistakes I couldn't change. Learning to let go, to trust that God is bigger than my problems and wiser than my plans, brought a peace I never knew existed. The fourth thing I wish I had understood sooner is that every day is a gift, not a guarantee. I spent so many years sleepwalking through life, focused on the next goal, the next achievement, the next thing I thought would make me happy. I missed countless sunrises, overlooked simple joys, and took for granted the people who loved me. Time is the most precious thing we have, and I wasted too much of it chasing things that ultimately didn't matter. The fifth and perhaps most important truth is that it's never too late to come home to God. I thought that because I had spent so many years running from faith, I had somehow missed my chance. I thought God might be angry with me for ignoring Him for so long, or that I was too old to start over. But God's love doesn't have an expiration date. His arms are always open, His grace is always available, and His love never gives up on us. Now, I want to share something with you that I hope you'll consider with an open heart. If you're watching this, and you recognize something of your own journey in my story, if you've been carrying burdens that feel too heavy, if you've been trying to find meaning and peace in all the wrong places, I want you to know that there's a love waiting for you that can transform everything. Jesus Christ came into this world to bridge the gap between us and God, to offer us forgiveness, peace and purpose that can only be found in Him. He's not looking for perfect people, He's looking for people who recognize their need for grace. You don't have to have your life figured out, you don't have to be worthy or good enough, you just have to be willing to accept His love and let Him be the Lord and Savior of your life. This isn't about joining a religion or following a set of rules. This is about entering into a relationship with the one who created you, who knows you completely, and who loves you unconditionally. It's about finding the peace and purpose your heart has been searching for all along. I know that might sound too simple, or too good to be true. I felt the same way for decades, but I've experienced firsthand the transformation that comes when we stop trying to do life on our own and start walking with God. The burdens become lighter, the future becomes brighter, and even our past mistakes become part of a beautiful story of redemption. As I sit here at 82, looking back on my journey, I'm not filled with regret for the years I spent far from God. Instead, I'm filled with gratitude for His patience, for His love that pursued me, even when I was running away, and for the peace I found in my final years. But more than anything, I'm filled with hope for you. If my story has touched something in your heart today, I want to encourage you to take that next step. Talk to God, even if you don't know how. Tell Him about your struggles, your fears, your hopes. Ask Jesus to be your Lord and Savior. Find a community of believers who can walk alongside you in this journey, and most importantly, don't wait. Don't spend another day carrying burdens that were never meant for you to carry alone. Thank you for listening to an old man share his heart with you. If this message has meant something to you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Share it with someone who might need to hear these words. Leave a comment and let me know how God is working in your life. Your story matters, and your testimony could be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Remember, it's never too late to come home to God. He's been waiting for you all along, and His love will transform your life in ways you never thought possible. Take that step today. You won't regret it. God bless you, and thank you for allowing me to share this journey with you.